Hey, what's up, guys? Did you hear about the employee who was being let go for poor performance and asked his boss to help him out with a letter of recommendation? The boss didn't want to refuse, but he was too honest to lie. So he just wrote, "You'll be very fortunate to get John to work for you." Get it? Okay, so let's talk about letting go. First of all, thank you for the wonderful response to last week's message about my mom. Your comments made me feel loved, and I truly appreciated each one of them. You know, it never ceases to amaze me that although I know most of you professionally in a real estate context, the messages you always respond to the most have little, if anything, to do with real estate. For example, based on what I said last week, many of you commented about the concepts of letting go and raising your energy levels. So over the next 2 weeks, we'll talk about those things, starting this week with the concept of letting go. Now, when someone says they need to work on letting go of something, what they're really doing is recognizing their own resistance to life. Everyone has their own story from the past, and I bet you can see your own patterns pretty clearly if you were to take a moment to reflect. Now, in my case, I grew up in an environment that didn't make me feel particularly safe. And as an adult, I quickly learned that I could control my professional life and specifically my income through sales. So in my 20s, having enough money provided me with a feeling of security and safety that I always lacked as a child. And by the time I turned 30, I learned to control not only my income, but nearly everything and everyone around me. And there were some definite benefits to this, but being a good Capricorn, of course, I took it to the extreme. And my need to control everything had a dark side. When I couldn't control something, I became irritated and angry. And I don't mean getting irritated with not being able to control the actions of a client. This need for control went much deeper, you guys. I'd get angry if I couldn't control what happened when I walked inside of a restaurant or a store. And in ways that are almost too embarrassing to admit, if the day wasn't going exactly like I thought it should, I would get emotionally disturbed. And this lack of emotional maturity ruined personal relationships. It blocked me from developing some deep friendships, created some professional enemies, and most importantly, generated a lot of internal dis-ease. Now, for a while, this was mostly unconscious behavior, but as I moved through my 30s, I began to be exposed to the works of Dr. Wayne Dyer, Eckhart Tolle, Louise Hay, David Hawkins, Richard Brody. I could go on for quite a while with a list of authors who slowly but surely began to awaken my mind to what I was doing to myself. Then in 2015, I turned 40, and a few months after that, my dad died. And that was the point where life began to take over. Now, this may sound dramatic, but over the last 6 years, culminating with the passing of my mom in February, life has been relentless at making sure that I learned how to let go of my need to control everything. Specifically, life has shown me that my presumed control was only ever an illusion. This entire time, life has been the one in control, and I'll likely spend the rest of my life learning this on deeper levels. But since so many of you seem to resonate with this concept, I thought I'd share my understanding of letting go. So first, we have to start with this basic premise. We live in an attraction-based universe. We get to decide what we want, and once we've made that decision, our job is to stay in a state of non-resistance so that life can work out the details and deliver our desires. Now, if you don't agree with that, then the rest of this is not going to make much sense. But to be clear, this doesn't mean we should create a vision board and then sit there in meditation until what we want falls into our lap. Instead, we create our vision and then get out there and engage in life, mostly by helping other people via our chosen profession. And as we engage in life, space is created for the details to fall into place. But for various reasons, like my desire to feel safe, humans get impatient and try to exert control in some way in one way or another. And that's our main form of resistance. It's like saying to a cork, "I need you to float," while we hold the cork under the water. I mean, if you just let go of the cork, it'll do what it's supposed to do and float. So how then do you let go of the cork? Well, this is where a bit of self-inquiry helps. Ask yourself, why do you insist on holding the cork underwater in the first place? In other words, what benefit are you getting from that behavior? As I discussed earlier, the benefit I got was a feeling of control that translated into safety, until one day I had experienced enough of life that it no longer did. Now, your story and your benefit are likely different, but here's where we all converge. As long as we continue to grow, eventually we'll get to the point where we have to let go. And I don't mean to be morbid, but one way or another, we're all forced to let go. Even if, like my grandfather, it's death that makes it happen. He struggled with so much internal dis-ease that I watched him literally smoke himself into physical disease and death. And I'm sure many of us know people who've done the same with drugs or alcohol. But if you can answer the question of what you're getting out of your particular resistance and controlling behavior, then you'll begin the process of letting go long before you die. Then, with an awareness of what you're controlling, what you're avoiding or fearful of, you can answer the next question. What will it take for you to be happy? Or maybe before that, ask, would you like to be happy? And this is perhaps my mom's final and most important lesson for me. Last week, when I described her laughing at me, she was illustrating what others have been trying to teach me. Have you ever heard the saying that there's no way to happiness, but happiness is the way? Well, you can't let go of much until you understand that. So can you make a deliberate decision that you want to feel good? A decision like that would be a big step. And no one is going to feel good all day, every day, but generally and mostly, would you like to feel good? Assuming the answer is yes, and assuming you're a little more aware of your own resistance and attempts to control life, sit with that desire to feel good and look back at other challenging times in your life. Can you identify a time when, looking back, you see exactly why things happened the way they did? Can you acknowledge the fact that you didn't really control much of anything and life worked it out for you? The more examples like that you can identify, and the more you remind yourself that you want to feel good, the faster you're going to learn to let go. Listen, at the end of the day, you don't really have to worry about this. Life forces everyone to let go one way or another. I'm only sharing these thoughts so that maybe for you, it doesn't have to get so intense in order to happen. Back in 2015, I lived in Austin, and I ran Town Lake daily. And almost every day I saw a car with a license plate that said, "Let go." Before I even realized how much I needed that lesson, I stopped and took a picture of that plate. So I say we all let go and let life do what it's going to do anyway. Control the show. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Next week, we're going to talk about how to raise your energy level to a more positive state. That should help with this happiness business, right? So until then, smile for me and get out there and build your own top producer life.